Oh, okay. Did you reveal who the last author of the year is?
I did not know.
Come on, start with a bang here.
Um, well, I have two surprises actually. One of them is well, actually, I guess I have three surprises. The last speaker is going to be Steve Chandler.
Oh,
Oh,
cool.
awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be Steve Chandler. Barring any complications, I'm pretty sure I've got him.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So that'll be our last. I have, you might know this guy's last name. His name is David Banks.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sorry?
So you're going to bring him on too?
Yeah.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
No.
Is too cool.
Yeah. So I've been in contact with David a little with, so Sid's son. Monique, you okay?
Oh my gosh, I can't wait.
How great.
So yeah, I've been in touch with Dave, and the initial idea was to do a Zoom call, like a full-fledged open Zoom call, which he's not interested in at this stage, but he said that he'd be willing to come on and talk to the book club. So I think our secret workaround is going to be get as many people into the book club as we can, so that they can get to hear Dave's talk, whatever Dave decides to share with us. The thing is, I will likely not make that one public beyond the book club.
Yeah.
That seems to be foolish. So I'll have to confirm that. And then
I love your surprises. Keep going.
So there's one more. I hope this one isn't anticlimactic now, but Sherry Hickman is going to talk to us as well. And she's an early 1970s Salt Springer who has passages in Linda's book. The
Enlightened Man.
Thank you, Dominic. Yeah. So we've got three coming up. Sherry and Dave will sort of be outside of the parameters of the book club, but we'll, as soon as we can, we'll get them on. And then yeah, Steve Chandler's going to be our last one for this year.
Oh, amazing.
That's exciting, eh? Yeah,
you're amazing.
Well done, you.
When Linda and I started talking about sort of early days, and I actually have another 90 minutes that I did with her personally, and I'll see if she'll release that, because we talked about we touched on Sid's thoughts on levels of consciousness and a few other things as well. So, but I haven't asked her if I can make that one public yet, but I will.
Or else, if she seems uncomfortable, you can say, "Can you make it public to the book club?"
So, sorry, Monique. With Linda, you mean?
Yeah. Did you hear me?
Yeah. No, I figured it out. I don't think with Linda it's an issue. Like, she was okay with making the last one public. It's just a question of I haven't asked her yet, so I didn't want to jump the gun. But I don't imagine. I'll have to review it. Like, we talked for a while, and I don't think we touched on anything inflammatory. I don't want to. As much as I am deeply interested in the early days of it, the purity of that initial experience of his, I also don't want to ruffle anyone's feathers. Like, I don't want to piss anyone off just because I'm curious about the early days.
Yeah, and I'm thinking the same thing with Sid's son. You have to, I think, be delicate and respectful, which you know.
Well, I think as with Linda, he's going to answer how he feels right in the moment. I mean, he's a big boy, and doesn't, truth is truth.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm pretty confident that he'll be all right. If his dad was any kind of an influence on him, I suspect he'll be fine. Anyway. But it was, even in preliminary conversations, he was saying that, he and his mom are the only ones who witnessed the actual experience. So there are only two people that witnessed it, and very, very few people that were really close in those early days. So trying to get in contact with those people is pretty cool. Anyway, what do you think so far of Hope for All?
Way better than I expected. Way better than I expected. I'm like nearly in tears reading. these stories. I love the way Jack just purely wrote it. Like the language is exactly how that person, whichever person would speak. Like I love how that's preserved.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, hi, Catherine.
Morning,
And
Catherine.
it's very. I mean, I just like I can imagine it, right? Like I can feel there in that, and I mean, I'm when I was reading the part about how, you know, this one woman explaining how a heroin addict, what they're doing, because she says, I was one. And then she's talking about, you might think they're just sitting there on the, you know, porch doing nothing, but they're doing a lot. And they're dreaming. They're dreaming of, you know, the world and what they're doing and all of that. And I just heard that and I thought, wow, of course, because that's the only way that they're able to think into a world that they want. They're taking drugs and then creating a world that they want, and they can't seem to do it outside of taking the drugs. And
it seems like the drugs offer a break from whatever thinking they're experiencing, and then because that break occurs, they're allowed to be creative with their own thinking, or something around there. It's I kind of feel the same way, Dominic. I started reading, it was like, oh, they're case studies, right? How is this going to work as a book club, right? And then as I was reading, I sort of started to have that same experience where it's like, you know, holy shit, stuff is jumping off the page at me now, both from sort of from a compassionate perspective, but also from there's some neat sort of coaching tidbits here, the neat stuff. Does anyone else have any thought? I've got a starting place for us. I've got a starting place for us, but does anyone else have any initial thoughts?
For me, it was like Jack really showing up as an empty vessel, that whole empty vessel, just being there and really being in the moment. You know, it was, I don't know, it was like, I thought the same thing at first, the case studies, but I already knew because Jack and I had talked about it because before it was released, I think there's some of it's based on prevention from the inside out.
Yeah. And
he had just said, you know, like that's the bigger, this is a kind of a more condensed version of that. So kudos to him. He's got such a talent for really bringing words, like you're right in there with the words. I don't know. That's what I felt.
Yeah. Again, I think, you know, what Dominic was saying as well, there's no sanitizing of the individual stories, right? Like the language is as if as they spoke it, I'm suspecting. Yeah. There's no corrections to language. There's no polishing. It's pretty raw. And I like, I mean, if we can trust that the interviews as written, I like how he's not very involved in there, eh?
Yeah. He's
not doing a whole lot. You know, so from looking at it from a coaching perspective or a transformational coaching perspective, it's pretty neat that he's just allowing people to tell their stories. So I wanted to, does anyone else have any other thoughts? Monique, what about you?
No, I was just curious because these were from a long time ago. So are these interviews that because it was 2003, are these interviews that he had then and recorded them and pulled them out because he just published this book recently, or did he get back in contact? No, I guess it was stuff he kept. I don't know. Anybody have any comments?
Well, my thought is, as Jessie Lynn was saying, that a lot of them are compilation. I mean, I'm only a few in so far, right? But they are, I think the first couple are pulled from like 91. I think I caught that somewhere. Yeah, so at least 92, 91, 92. But yeah, they are originally from Health Realizations. I think some of them might even be in his doctoral thesis from back then. There you go. Oh, prevention from the inside out. Yeah, thanks, Catherine. Yeah, right. All right. Well, let's tell you what. this is sort of halfway through, what are we at? Halfway through the second case study, and it kind of jumped out at me. So I'll just read it, and maybe that'll give us a starting point. The kids, they catch on so quick, but at first it was real trying. One day I asked them to draw something, and what they drew was tombstones and guns and Uzis, all kind of stuff. It was just sad. That was sad to me. When I drove home that night, I was thinking about it, and I didn't understand what I needed to do, but having that hour-and-a-half commute was really good for me because I could kind of sort stuff out. And it occurred to me that instead of asking them how their community was, maybe I should ask them to dream of what they wanted their community to be like. And that changed the whole flavor of the class. At this time, when they did their drawings, they drew fruit trees. What the kids wanted was, they wished there was trees out there that had fruit, where they could just go in their yard and pick the orange or a plum or a peach or something like that. And they wished that they had equipment where they could play on. They had sandboxes and stuff, but all the toys had been tore up years ago. Some of them wished they had grass and flowers in there instead of dirt. It was just like barren dirt. Have you ever been out there? So this kind of jumped out at me, more so from a coaching approach. To me, it felt a lot like a coaching paradigm that I'm kind of exploring right now, which is called solution-focused coaching. So I wanted to kind of lead in with that and see if there were any thoughts around our own coaching or looking at our community, what people thought about the idea of focusing on the present versus focusing on the present you would like to create.
It's funny that you say that for me this week, I've been working with friends of mine who are going through a separation. It's the first time I've actually taken on clients that are close to me in my life personally. And I started off with that as a common kind of a solution is, what do you want it to look like at the end of this process? Mm-hmm. You know, what do you want your relationship to look like? And we've been working from that. But to sit and be present with them during all the emotions. And I think it's for the first time it's been really different because I know them, like oof. But I think that solution focused part has helped them a bit.
Right.
You know? Because there is a tendency to go back, during the conversations, like, so it's really been an honor to sit with them through this.
Very cool, Jessie Lynn. Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that when I'm having conversations with people, it's something that I have to be cognizant of all the time to not fall into examining the problem or examining the present. It's a challenge. I have a couple of challenges. This is one of them. Anyone else have thoughts around that?
I do. I just finished reading Steve Chandler's book, Creator.
Mm-hmm.
I'm about to start reading it for the second time because I loved it so much. But one of the things that jumped out.
Hold on a sec. Should we tell Catherine? Was she on?
Yeah, I think she missed
it. Did we make her wait?
Is that the next book?
What?
Is that what you're saying?
Our last guest is going to be Steve Chandler.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah,
That's
anyway, so it's
amazing. I just think this is his best book ever. And one of the things that jumped out is the difference, but he makes a distinction between, being reactive or being a creator.
Right.
And I was walking one day after reading that, and it just was rippling out in me. And I saw really clearly, I had a big insight around how I'd been focusing on what I see as some problems in my life. And it just, something inside me just turned me right around. And I saw so clearly that if I would just create what is calling me to create it, that all of those so-called problems would just be taken care of automatically. And I wasn't trying to make myself believe that. It was like all of a sudden I saw very clearly that if I focused on those challenges, I would just continue to muck around in the challenges. And the answer for all of those challenges was to move into being a creator. And there's some things in my, some things that are calling out to me to be created. And it was just so clear that all that stuff, absolutely 100% I knew that'll all be taken care of effortlessly. The solution to all of that is in the creating of what's asking me to be created in my life. So I really love that. In the book too, he also talks about his coach saying, he went and he was saying, this is wrong. He was being coached by Steve Hardison, and Steve listened to him. Everything was wrong. He said, given all of that, what would you like to create now? And it just was so beautiful, because it sounds like that to me. If something's falling apart in my life, a relationship, or I'm transitioning into moving out of a marriage, perhaps, Jessie Lynn, there's something really beautiful about what is it that I'm creating, even though something's falling away. Out of that, something new is always being created in the space that's left. So I love that, because it just feels like the energy of life to me then starts to flow through us more, and even as something is falling away, there's that flicker of new life that's blossoming in place of whatever's falling away. So it kind of speaks to that to me. And that's such a hopeful place, because it's full of life force. Like, it's full of creative life force. Even with the sadness of what's falling away, if that makes sense. So it's really a beautiful place to be introduced to.
That's awesome, Catherine. Yeah.
Great.
And this might just be semantics now, but creator. So everything that you're saying, I'm feeling that in my own experience right now. The word that I've been using is allowing.
Yeah.
So again, it's semantics, but being in a place where you're not trying to make things effortless, they just are effortless because you're getting out of the way. And I was chatting with Dominic about this fairly recently, and in my own experience, just having sort of a general direction and then allowing things to come in has been really, really fruitful lately. I mean, I've been trying to develop coaching, trying to find coaching conversations, and allowing or creating, recognizing that as a modality counter to hard work and effort has been interesting, because I've been raised with hard work and effort. So it's counterintuitive to just get out of the damn way, but it's been really, really, it's borne fruit, and it's been so much easier. It's such a nicer ride,
Yeah, I agree. It's a misnomer to use creator as a noun. It's a verb. It's a verbing. That's it's allowing the creative energy to flow through. So I just become, the conduit. So I just become the hands and the feet of that.
Did you just make a joke out of conduit and can do it?
It's probably like,
that was freaking brilliant, man.
I was joking on the word, like, how do I pronounce that?
Catherine, that's gonna have to go in your book. That'll have to be one of your little things.
I haven't had my coffee yet. I was an hour off. I was just about to take the dog for a walk. I got the time change wrong again. It's an hour. I'm an hour earlier than you now, not an hour later. So anyway.
That's great.
I'm tripping over my tongue, but that's,
that was a good one.
Yeah, that was a really good one. So you just created
you can put that in a book.
I like that a lot. I'm stealing that liberally, Catherine.
I wanted to say too with that was a really powerful place, and the shift, and even when Jessie Lynn talks about kind of what's happening for her in this in coaching and in working with this couple from the point of what do they want. The thing about creator, which is why, you know, when we say it's effortless, it's because we're always creating. You can never not be creating. So we think like, oh, I need to be the creator of my life. Well, you already are, and you can never turn it off. So that's a good starting point, is to understand that you are always creating. You're not always awake and conscious when you're creating, but you are. So that's something. And so then those children were engaged in a conversation about, so tell us about, you know, what's it like here? And what you're really, a question like that is asking you about, tell me what you are currently creating. That's what that question is asking. Tell me, what are you currently creating in your life? It's even technically a little different. It's tell me what you have created. It isn't even what you're currently creating. Tell me what you've already created.
What you've already witnessed. Yeah.
And it isn't witnessed. You are creating with your thoughts, and you currently have created this. And so by asking that and engaging people in that, and in coaching, if you keep engaging people in that, tell me what's going on in your marriage, and, you know, what brought you here, and how come you're here now, what's happening that you don't like, is like you're asking what have you created, and whatever is currently in your mind, you will continue to create. So when we ask that question and we fill up people's minds with the current reality, so then you are feeling thought in the moment. And by the way, the thought in the moment that you're talking to people about is the thought about what you have created. So you're just regurgitating the current creation.
Yeah, right.
The question that got asked of those children, which is so amazing, is because you could think anything, right? And so then to ask them the question about how would you want this community to be? Now that's different. This is a completely different thought. And we always will move in the direction we're looking. And so Jessie Lynn, and asking the question about, you know, how do you know, tell me about your marriage if it was great, and if you were doing that. So now people are in that kind of a conversation. And, you know, as a coach, you've asked that question. Now that question directs attention, it directs thinking, and their thinking is now about what they are wanting to create. It's a very different question. Yeah.
Well said, Dominic. And yeah, witness was not the right word there. Thank you for that. Maria, can I call you out? What do you think so far?
I love what everyone is sharing. And in my experience, when being coach and coaching others or working in groups, if we direct the conversation towards what's wrong with this community, what's lacking, what are the complaints, the feeling drops. Whereas when we go to what you're doing for your community, like the question similar to what Jack asked, then there's such an energy in the room that is a much more fertile ground for new things to arise. So I see it in that sense. And the same with coaching, like even in my own experience, if someone is asking me about what's the problem, I will feel myself going down and down, like, and then it's impossible to see clearly.
How do you, so this is just a curiosity now, but why do you think most psychoanalysis or most therapy is still problem oriented? I mean, we're all brilliant, so that's cool, and we get it. But why do you think? Why do you think we're? Thank you for laughing, Jesse. Why do you think we're still stuck in that model? Like, why is that problem distinct or problem examining model still so pervasive?
It's changing.
Yeah, I do. I think there's a field of psychology though where they do dissect, like feel like dissecting and looking for the source of this problem, and then going from there. Where it's nice to see it changing, because there is a lot of the fields of psychology that it's always looking back for the source of this and analyzing that, and damn Freud.
It's interesting. I was just thinking about the different, as I was trying to heal from chronic PTSD. I tried a lot of different things, and some of the ones I tried where you do take the past events that were so hurtful, and then you change them. And so by changing them, like you do an actual whatever visualization and you experience it, that's supposed to change your feeling state in the future. Newsflash, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Newsflash, it doesn't work. Yeah.
I think that the thing about why does it go that way? It seems like it would make sense to say, if something is broken and we can understand, then we can repair. And there's, in solution-focused coaching, there's this kind of neat little video that someone did with it. And they said, if you had a car and then the car wasn't working, you actually do not want to hire a solution-focused mechanic. So they said, it is what you want if your car isn't working is you just hire a mechanic who's really good at diagnosing problems, right? So the guy comes, he looks, right, and then he quickly figures out there's not oil or something, right? So then there's the problem right there, and you just replace it, right? But then we transfer that into human beings, right?
Right.
Human beings which have, unlike a car, although this could be argued, but human beings who have a spiritual component that's connected to pure possibility and potential, right? That and again, always flowing an energy that is creating our world. And then we say, oh, I got this problem here, and then we kind of go, well, why don't we look at it? Now we take that creative energy of the universe and we zero it in on this problem, and we're just gonna enlarge and make more of it. And so it doesn't work, but logically it would seem so, to sort of give some empathy, right? It would seem in the helping professions that the only way to help is you've really got to figure out what is wrong, because unless you figure out what is wrong, then you couldn't fix it. But as Catherine's saying from even the book, I can't wait to read the book, to some degree, you could ignore what's wrong and get on with what you're wanting to create, because the two are not connected. So once you see that I'm not in a relationship and I haven't been, as opposed to trying to understand what's wrong with you. Why aren't you in a relationship?
Dominic, are you talking about me again?
What's wrong with you, and how come you can't make them work? And the last one dissolved, right? So instead of that, you could just say, wait a minute, what am I trying to create, and what do I want to create? And it seems paradoxical, but without even dealing with this problem, you could actually just go on and create what you want. More efficient, too.
I had a very personal experience of this. My partner and I, John, for some reason, we hadn't done it in a long time, but a few days ago or last week, we got all bogged down in looking at the problems in our relationship and some difficulties from the past. And all of a sudden we both, or I guess I shifted from looking like it was just going downhill fast. Like it was like, wow, I didn't even know we were still capable of doing this. Yeah. And we decided to just sort of, we don't live together, so we decided to sort of leave it alone and go and do other things. And I was taking the dog for a walk, and I just had this insight that we could just leave that we could look at what we wanted to create together now, that was literally possible in the moment. And it's like something fell away from me, and I sent him this text message, and we got together, an hour later, and it was like, let's start focusing on what we want to create. Like none of that stuff from the past. We hurt each other in our, I'm going over a 12-year relationship, a lot of unconscious things that we did. We love each other. And I literally felt fresh and new. Like I felt the energy of that. And my mood just was up here. I just looked at him. I'm like, man, we can do anything. We can create anything we want together. None of that stuff matters anymore. And he could feel it, like it was like a real moment of grace, where that was the literal truth for me. I saw him with completely fresh eyes, and I saw our ability, the capacity that the two of us, if we chose to, that we could begin creating right in that moment something fresh and new and beautiful. And that's the same for any category of life. I could see that was true, not just for my relationship with him, but for coaching, for working, for creating something, creating a business myself, that it could begin right now with the pure potential in the moment, infinite potential. Like I was feeling it, right? Instead of trying to convince myself of that as a concept. So, yeah.
Again, yeah, nice, Catherine. I think the distinction between trying to create as a concept and, again, creating or allowing is
yeah, I couldn't make that happen myself. It was like, it happened like as I continued to look in this direction and stay in the conversation. It was an insight. It wasn't something I made happen. All of a sudden, the old stuff fell away, and I saw the potential in the moment in terms of allowing, right?
So do we, this might segue a little bit, but do we have a choice? Like we have this amazing potential to create both of those scenarios that you described, right? The positive one and the one that you viewed as negative, or that we might view as negative. Do we have a choice in our creation? I mean, did you somehow on some level choose to create the one that bogged you down? Did you on some level choose to create the other one, or did they just happen?
I think when you get caught up in the thinking of the story, if you get caught up in the problems, that's kind of where you'll stay. It's kind of like, you see, like I saw like a dog walking, and the dog doesn't want to go. The dog's feet are just like traction in the ground there, and I think that's what happens when we get stuck in a story. We're kind of being in the flow, to me, is like when I'm just letting it be, whatever it is.
I like that, and I like that the dog that works. Yeah, like a dog on a leash, dug in. Yeah.
Well, because I saw like a little French, I don't know what they're called, like a little Frenchie or something. They look like a little pug dog, and he didn't want to go, and those tiny little legs were just, he just was stuck there, and that was that, and I was just like, oh, good on you.
It's amazing how strong those little legs can be, eh?
Yeah.
This kind of fits. It's from I think the first case study now. Woman is describing some experiences listening to Roger Mills, and an interesting thing happened for me when Roger spoke about a quiet mind. I started hearing scriptures out of the Bible. Like he would say, We've got to have a quiet mind and connect with this thing inside of us. And I would hear, be still and know. At this time, I didn't know anything about scriptures, but he would say one thing and I'd hear something coming from inside of me, something else. So I'm wondering, how did he do that trick? I thought it was some kind of a trick. So I was sitting like in the back, and I said to myself, I've got to get up here closer so I can examine him. So I got up there closer, and he appeared to me to be cutting up everything that I believed in, because he was talking about 12-step programs and how you could peel the onion layer by layer if you wanted to, or you could learn this, and it was like having a knife cutting in you straight to the core. That jumped out at me. And the little note that I made, was, what are we hearing and where are we listening from? So when we hear someone say something, and then our inner voice responds, or we're caught up in a certain mode of thinking, and then we have an insight, what are we hearing in that moment? I thought it was neat. If no one else does, we can move on. Hey, Arvin, are you there? I guess not, eh?
I don't know. Can you clarify your question?
Well, it was really just, I don't even know if it's so much a question as a talking point, but for this woman, she was hearing Roger Mills say one thing, but in her, from her own intuition or from her own voice, she was hearing something different, So I was just sort of curious what our thoughts were around what someone else says and what I hear, or what someone else says and what I bring into creation, or what I allow. Where is that happening? How is that happening? What's enabling that to happen? Catherine says, or shares her insight, we all hear it in our own way, and I'm just sort of curious what we think about where that listening or where that different hearing comes from. Is that helpful, Maria?
Well, do you think that ego has a role there? Sorry, Dominic.
Well, yeah, the thing, so, what we know from the principles of, realizing is nothing outside of you can create anything inside of you. But it really does look like, something Catherine said was so inspiring, or she said something that made me see something. So it really does look that way. And we know it isn't, because Catherine said whatever she said. If there were 50 people, then it changed my life, and someone else is going, she's full of shit, right? So we know
in their eyes.
So we know it can't be, right? So that then it still is over here. And so I wake up, I'm in a bad mood, I open Facebook, and all of these inspiring quotes are just a load of crap, right? Like, they're just dumb, simplistic little things, right?
Right.
Or I go through that stream in a different thing that I'm tuned into, right? Just seeing pure truth and inspiration and all these little pithy quotes and pictures. So Roger said something, and then that woman was tuned, ready. She was open to actually hearing pure truth, right? to come in. That's kind of what I'm taking from that.
That seems pretty reasonable to me, Dominic. Yeah. And again, what I want to clarify is I'm learning my role as a facilitator in these book talks and roundtables. So I'm asking questions, not necessarily that I am looking for an answer for, but as a discussion, just so that we're clear on that, right? So there's one other one that jumped out at me from the first one. And I thought this was really telling. And she's describing, I'm not sure if it's first, second, or third relationship, but I think it's her second husband who has left and has come back 20 years later. It's on page 19 in the book. I'm not sure where that puts it in Kindle. A year before getting into this understanding, I was living back at my parents' house because they had bought another house. And he had come knocking on the door looking for me when his mother passed away. And he said, "Are you married?" That's the first thing came out of his mouth. And I'm going, "What do you mean, am I married?" And he says, "I came back to marry you." And I'm going, "I think you're about 20 some years late on this marriage thing. Why did you ever leave me?" And he said, "Do you remember when I used to come visit you, and on Fridays your dad would wave the gun at me because he'd be drunk, and he'd be cussing and going and fighting your mom?" And I said, "Well, yeah." And he said, "Well, I got scared, and I thought if I married you, your dad would shoot me one day." And I said, "Well, there were no bullets in the gun." He goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "Because on Thursday night, we take the bullets out of the gun because we know he's going to come home Friday and swing the gun. And on Sunday, before he comes home, we put them back in there because we know he's going to clean his gun on Monday." So this guy left me, and I'm thinking rejected and getting into all these relationships trying to get back at him. And it was all because he thought that my dad was going to hurt him. And so this just kind of jumped out at me as an example of how easily we can make up shit that just is not true.
Oh my gosh.
So it just, again, it kind of jumped out at me with because I've done that so many times, right? And I still do it. I did it most recently when I was announcing to the people in my gym that I was that I was selling it, excuse me. And I built it up over days, and and I avoided writing a letter, and of course, I'm in tears, crying, and people are just like, "Hey, congratulations, man! That's really awesome." It's like, wow, I felt kind of silly, but it's just it jumped out at me because I think it's such a common thing.
Totally.
To get caught up in something that makes sense. It doesn't even have to make sense, but we concoct this story. And on one level, the story satisfies us, or it fills a need for an answer, and it's it's totally made up. Like it's just created out of thin air. Anyway, so that was another one I wanted. Go ahead, Minnie.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it is. I remember when I first got understood the principles, and I did kind of what that lady did. And I was looking over my life, and it's a scary thing to think that you held a belief for 20 years and you lived it and you were upset with someone when it was all untrue. Like you had personalized it and it was completely off. It's very humbling.
Yeah, humbling.
Totally.
But then most people never see that they're making it up. Like a lot of people just go to their graves like this. So on the other hand, I think how freaking amazing that we're seeing this to some degree, to whatever degree we are. And I get what you're saying though, Monique, but that's where I shift into trusting the bigger picture. Like you see what you see when you see it. And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, otherwise I'd be bogged down in, stuff from the past that I did that I thought was based on something true so it's really an act of I don't even know if it's self-compassion. It's that clarity of knowing you can just drop the past. Like for me, that's a lifesaver because we don't want to go there. I mean, you know, I don't want to go there, but I did for most of my life. There's some grace in the past dropping away from you. In my experience, I couldn't drop it until I did. I noticed it was gone one day. Like, really, I wasn't carrying the weight of the past anymore. I'm not exactly sure how that happened, but it did.
No, but it's just in reference to the stories we make up. You know, like
yeah.
That's what was freaking me out, was how we create these stories, we believe them for decades, and they're not true.
It was, that story, it was sad, right? Like, I mean, 20 years, whatever that was, it was sad that, because if I remember when it happened, she said about how, oh, I think I was too fat, or, you know, I was too big. Like, I'm thinking, oh my God, like, so here she is, like, I'm no good because I'm too big and there's no, right? And it has nothing to do with this. Yeah. It was because he thought her father was going to shoot him. It had nothing to do with her whatsoever. So her mind just hit something and then carried it for the next, 20 years. It was like, oh my God, that's so amazing that we have the power to do it. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dominic. It is sort of amazing that we have this gift, like, that we have the ability to get caught up is kind of neat in and of itself. You know, it's like, it's not ideal, but I think it does point to the breadth and depth of what we're able to create, right? The capacity that we have to create at either ends of the spectrum. You know, like having the wherewithal to be on either end of the extreme is pretty neat.
And maybe it is
once
ideal.
You're not trapped in it anymore. Sorry, Catherine, go ahead.
I was just saying, maybe it is ideal. Like, who says it's not ideal even? Like, we don't even know what this game is all about. This is a freaking mystery. It's like, who says it's not ideal that we get caught up and then we wake up out of it? I mean, it's like, who says it's not ideal? It's such a mystery that why it is the way it is to me.
And isn't it cool how, we think it's such a big deal to, I've got this view of myself and I lack confidence and I don't think I'm able to whatever, but boy, how could I create, a different self-image or have more confidence and all that, right? Like, so it's like this big hard thing, but look how easy it was for her. But I mean on the, the beginning side, look how easy it was with something that didn't have anything to do with her. So this guy leaves, right? She goes, I'm worthless, no good, overweight, no one's going to ever love me. Just like that. Boom, right? You can create something. There's no effort required. It doesn't take a long time and you don't need a lot of affirmations. Right? You don't need to stand in front of the mirror with a lot of affirmations. Just like that, you can create it. And then 20 years later, just like that, it kind of like disappeared.
Amazing. Amazing.
It would be interesting to ask how we can create the opposite version of it.
Say that again, Arvind, please.
So instead of creating the negative part about whatever's happened, we could see, there might be a way we could just do the opposite instead of the whatever make us feel really down, right? So I'm just wondering, like, if it is, we could create it negative like this, we could have, like her, she could have created the positive. It's like, I am too good for him, or something like that, right?
And that would have been another. Oh, sorry, Dominic, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say that some people do. This is why it's so random. Like, we try to protect people from everything. It's sort of like your kids. The best is your kids. Like, watch what I say so that I don't, create any negative self-image and all that. Oh, and at school, you got to be careful because the teacher might say something and then they turn out shy, or right? Like all this negative stuff can happen. But the same example, if you took that woman, the guy leaves, a different person in the same situation says, that jerk, he didn't know how good he had it. And thank God he walked out, because if he's not good enough to marry someone like me, better I find out now. So someone else would have, just in that moment, it would have gone off in a whole other direction and different identity.
I think the beautiful thing is that we don't have to create the positive. Our default is, like for me, rather than trying to create the positive, like on the opposite end of the spectrum of that negative mindset, what I find is when I fall out of my personal conditioned thinking, I fall into, what are we going to call it? My true nature or awareness, and in that place, things are beautiful. They're not like, I don't go around as a Louise Hay trying to do positive affirmations. It's much easier than that. It's an acceptance of life that looks way more positive, I'm sure, from the outside. But that's not the intention. I'm not trying to create something more positive. It's this effortless surrender to what is, and that what gets created from that place, I feel good. I feel in a more positive place without having to try and make that happen myself. Does that make sense? Like for me, that's the beauty of the three principles understanding. I tried to affirm myself into a positive state of mind for 35 years. And then, my whatever would reassert itself. So this understanding just gave me access to something that feels more effortless, that feels like my true nature, however we want to talk about it.
That sounds really right to me.
I wonder, it's bang on 11. That might have just been a perfect endpoint for us. Hey, Catherine, well done. Do we have any other thoughts?
I really love this book club. Thank you so much for creating it.
Oh, I just allowed it to happen. Yeah. Thank you. Every time I get on here, it's like 1 minute, 2, and there's no one here. I'm like, oh fuck, no one's gonna show up. And then people show up, and our life is wonderful again, right? I just, Catherine, what I heard in what you were saying there was the more accepting we are of the variability of life, the less we seem to get caught in what we would call downturns, or at least that's how it sort of looks to me. It's like, yeah, life is a contact sport, and sometimes it's going to be challenging, and I don't need to make more of that challenge than is being presented. And the more I allow life to live through me, the more that I allow creation to live through me, the less the down stuff seems to hang around. I don't know if that encapsulates what you said. It seems to fit. Anyone else have any last thoughts around that before we get on the rest of our weekend? Cool.
I'm looking forward to the rest of the book, though.
Yeah, no, me too.
It was different than I expected. I'm enjoying it more than I expected.
Well, and I feel the same way, Dominic. When I first picked it, I was like, and then because I didn't know anything about it, I just, it's Jack's latest book. Cool, we'll do that. Oh shit, it's case studies. How is this going to? What's going to happen here? So I'm glad that we're all okay with it. And like I said in the beginning, I'm pulling a lot of neat stuff out of it that I think is going to be helpful in my own coaching and my own development, both from the way Jack is involved, but also witnessing the people's their stories, their evolution into the principles and into their understanding is really neat to see. It's like, oh yeah, I saw that, or I haven't seen that. It's cool. It's very cool. Anyway, awesome. Love you all. We'll see you next Saturday at 10. Catherine, do we want to send you an alarm?
Yeah, do.
I'll do my best.
Say yes, because I'll take all the help I can get for showing up on time. Because it's kind of a thing I'm working on without trying to work on it too hard. So.
Well, keep us posted. Maria, very nice to meet you. I hope you join us again. And we're all unmuted, right? Arvin, all right, goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys. Have a fabulous weekend.
Have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.